Hey guys, so some of you have seen me work on these before. They're very common in this area. Sunny D Manufacturing builds these in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And this customer of mine, you guys have seen a couple of pieces of his equipment. He actually owns the Peterbilt. Him and his son own the Peterbilt that's in the shop there. And the really nice what was it, a 388, the one that I did the outer frame Cummins ISX, it was a CM2350 rebuild. That's one of his trucks too, Dave drives. And anyways, this one here is actually this is a hay squeeze. So if you don't know what this does, if you've got a New Holland bell wagon such as that right there, that's an H9880, you pick up your hay, and it depends. This bell wagon here will pick up a block of hay. It depends on what your stack pattern is. There's a lot of variables there. You can set your stack pattern with this in the computer. You can do 12 on edge for the first tier, which a lot of guys do because it gives it a good solid base for the hay to set on. And then what you'll do is you'll set your stack pattern. When I used to run these when I was a kid, my family raised hay. We would haul hay, and we usually did, if we were going close to the barn, if the fields are right by the pole barn where we were stacking our hay in the barn with one of these, we would just haul 7 highs, because we had 2 7 highs stacked together, and that would be 14 high. So I would take the bell wagon and start a stack out by the barn, and my uncle would usually run the hay squeeze and put them in the barn while I was hauling them in from the field. So usually you would start out with what they called 12 on bottom is what we did on edge, and then every other tier, which would be each layer, would have 8 bells, and you would do what they call 12 on edge standard, then trying to remember, I think then a regular standard, which would be 8 flat, and then you would do a double rail, which would be, how can I put this, you'd have 2 bells come in like this, and then you'd have 2 like this. Then the second table would come back, the second table will come back, and these 4 bells will slide to the back. And then the same exact thing, you're gonna have 2 bells go up first on this first table. They'll come up flat, and then the third bell that comes up, the spikes here will come up. See these spikes? And then this shoe right here will come up, and then it'll put the one up in the center, and the 2 bells that are sitting on the table, they'll go like that. And then the 4th bell will come up and go in between them as well, and that's a double rail. And then you would have another standard. See, I'm trying to remember. So you'd have standard, double rail, standard, center rail, standard, double rail, standard. That's how, I know it's a little confusing, but I used to run the hell out of these when I was a kid. This one actually has what they call a mill stack big bell loader. I don't really care for those because you almost want to get these machines are not made for those really, because the frames and stuff are not heavy enough on them, and it just really kills these. It just absolutely kills. I've seen a lot of these with frames broken too by loading big bells with them. These were originally, I mean, these were for small bells, you know. But anyways, so now you know that picks the hay up out of the field, that stacks the hay by the barn, and there's a lot of variables as well there. You can haul, these will haul 11 highs. The old 1075s, this is an H9880. They used to start out with when I was a kid, we started out with a 1048 New Holland. It had wood side racks on it. And then we got a 1065. The 1048, all it would do is haul all the bells flat. That's all you could do with it, which is not a very good stack, because what happens is the stacks aren't tied together. So once this whole load rack right here, it'll come up on end like this, and these push-off feet will come up against the stack of hay, and you push yourself off from the stack, and see that hay will sit on these forks right here. So anyway, a 8 high stack or 7 high stack of just flat bells, it's not a very good stack, because the stack doesn't have the ties, such as what I was telling you, the double rail and the center rail. So anyways, if we were hauling a long ways from the barn, we had 1075s. I mean, we had 1095s. So we could, the numbers keep going up, but they changed their whole number pattern. New Holland did, and I see the The one before this was the BW28, and so I'll just give you a little chronological, numerical order here. The ones I remember, they had a 1048, they had a 1049, then they had a 1065, a 1075, 1085, 1095, then they went to a BW28, and then they went to this H9880, and my customer that has this one has a new one that I don't remember. It's like a W103 or some goofy number now that they didn't really stick with their number pattern very well. But anyway, I just kind of want to give you a brief overview of how that works, hauling hay, and what this does, because it works in conjunction with this machine. So, text messages going off. Anyway, so my customer here, he hauled this up to Sunny D. He's from Petaluma. As you can see, this is what they call the clamp. This grabs that 7 high or 8 high block or whatever. You can grab a 10 high block, and it squeezes. You grab the bottom of the bells and it squeezes the whole thing together, and it picks the whole thing up and puts it in the barn. Or these guys load trucks with it. Some guys, that's all they do. They'll go around from farmer to farmer and load the hay trucks that are going to the dairies, and that's all they do is run hay squeeze. So one of the things that happens on these hay squeezes is this curl, this clamp has got kind of a little bit of a curl in the end of it here to help grab it, to help grab the hay. It usually either this gets really worn out over time, this edge here, which most of the time the clamp just gets worn out to where it doesn't have that bend in it anymore, and they won't grab the, you can squeeze it all you want, and the bells, they won't stay in the clamp. They become kind of a pain in the butt. But anyways, Ed and them guys, they completely, this is all new. All this is new. There's big, you guys seen me rebuild a couple of clamps myself, and you've seen the bushings and stuff here that I put in there, and all this tubing that I redid and all that good stuff. Anyway, so that's what this does, okay? So on to the problem that we're having. I looked at this when I was down in Santa Cruz. I stopped in at Petaluma on my way through, and I didn't have enough time to, the biggest diagnosis I did is I did an injector return flow test. I did the common rail pump test on it. This has got an IEC 8.3 common rail engine in it, and I deduced from all my troubleshooting it was a low side pressure. It was a low side air intrusion problem. So when this thing's off for a while, it will not start again. You have to either bleed it manually up here on the filter head, or you have to use ether to get it started. So we're gonna go ahead and pop the hood on this old girl. The old antenna's not standing up very good anymore, is it? He's got a brand new one ordered, but Ed and them are so busy because it's a pretty big business up there, and they've got a lot of orders. And the last I heard, I didn't ask Ed this, but somebody had told me that they were like 3 years behind on orders and weren't taking any more orders anymore for now until they get kind of caught up, because they got so many orders out for, they build these from scratch up there, from the bottom up. But anyway, this guy's got a new one ordered, but it'll be another year before he gets it. So he says, let's get this one fixed. So I want to look at here. Okay, so we got to figure out where our problem is. They've been changing a lot of stuff. Somebody's put a filter on there. Let's see here. Why is that clamp wet right there? I'm seeing wet things in here. I'm seeing a bracket that's rubbing on that hose right there. That's not good. Somebody replaced this hose right here. Somebody replaced this. I don't know if Ed and those guys did that, or it looks almost like that's new, doesn't it? So, the thing to do is figure out what's your fuel flow. Okay, your lift pump on these ISC 8.3s is behind the ECM, believe it or not. Real convenient spot, huh? This line right here, this quick connect fitting, this is, why is that dripping? Is that our problem? Where is the fuel coming from on that? I'm kind of wondering. Why is that wet? Why Why is this wet? Why are those wet? Okay. So, what we could have, there's a multitude of things it could be. Ed said that they did some testing on it as well, and it would run out of a bucket, and that was my idea, is a 5-gallon bucket. So basically, this little block back here, there's some test ports on it you can then do. It's kind of like the truck engines. You can do return flow, injector return flow test. You can do common rail pump return flow test. You can do your relief valve return flow test. And I did all that when I was up there, and everything was fine on the high pressure side of the system. So it's on the low pressure side of the system, and it's getting air, and I know that for a fact because let's just trace this out. The lift pump sucks from right here on this hose, and you can't see it, but it comes in between the behind the ECM, comes out of the out of the lift pump, goes out, and what it's going to do is go into, I'm trying to remember now. It goes out of the lift pump, and then it goes into the gear pump, okay? So then the gear pump pushes the fuel. Let's see, the gear pump. I'm trying to remember this because I had this all figured out the day I was down there when I was looking at Cummins Quick Serve. Here's this hose. Where is this hose going? That's basically the discharge side of the gear pump. This is the suction side of the gear pump. So here we go. Okay, here's the way it works, guys. Now I remember. So the lift pump will discharge this down here. Well, guys, I pulled this old Cummins here and this hay squeeze into the shop last night just to let it set all night to replicate the problem in it. We need light. Hold on, let me get my big snap-on light. And there's another shop light I got to turn on over here. That'll help things out. And first thing we're going to do is get Cummins inside on it, and we want to look at rail pressure. And then I want to see everything there as we crank on it, because I guarantee it's not going to start. It might start, but it might just die right after that, and then it's done. We'll see. Okay, so we got Insight fired up. Got the data link connector hooked up to the data link port on the squeeze. Let's turn the key on. Let's connect to the ECM. Hear that lift pump? It's got air in it right now. Now it's picking up fuel. Now it's laboring, which it should not do that. An active license engine model is required inside. Connect. What are you talking about? I've never had it say that before. The hell are you talking about? That was weird. Yeah, I don't understand that. Okay, I had to reboot my Insight program. I don't know why it did that. I have an active license. I have a subscription through Cummins. I'm like, why are you telling me I don't have a license, you son of a bitch? Anyways, I'm sure Ed and those guys did a lot of good troubleshooting up there. After treatment, this will apply filter differential pressure sensor circuit voltage below normal or shorted to low source. Inactive. Okay. So there's no fuel codes in there right now. When I picked it up yesterday and I drove it down, when I showed up, he left it in the parking lot running because we didn't want to shut it off because he was afraid it wasn't going to start again. And I noticed the high exhaust temperature light was on and it was idled up. And I said, shit, this thing's right in the middle of a regen. So I got in there and I just put her on the floor. And so let's go into our data monitor logger. And let's see what we've got for rail pressure and all those good things. We want to go to our, I would say a hard start situation. And then we want to go to electric fuel pump there it's 0% because it's off. It's not being commanded. It only runs for about 10 seconds on these ISC 8.3s. The ISXs run a lot longer. They run around 30 seconds when you turn the key on. It's operating. Okay, so I just want to look at all this data here. Engine coolant temperature, that's about right. You know, 46.5 degrees. It's cold this morning, snowing, sitting in the shop. Engine backup speed sensor synchronization, no pulse because we're not cranking on it yet, so we'll have to crank on it. I'm sure those are fine. Yeah, just almost 100% sure that it's a fuel problem. Okay, rail pressure. Fuel pressure commanded, fuel pressure measured. Okay. Let's see what it does. Like, sometimes it will start and then it'll die. Sometimes it won't start at all. Okay, let's watch this live data. These two right here are the ones I want to be looking at. See, my rail pressure dropped. All the fuel that was in the rail's gone now. See, it keeps dropping. There's no fuel in the rail. Okay, so she's not starting. And we know for a fact, I'm not even going to look at the pulses on the crank and the cam because I know for a fact that my rail pressure is being commanded to 6,000 psi and I'm clear down to 300 psi. Alright, so what I wished I would have done last night is I wish that I would have maybe took my test hose and put it on here and bypassed. I don't know what to do really, which way to go on this right now. I need another light, I can tell you that much right now. This light here is good for kind of a flood situation, but when you really want to shine in on the location that you're trying to look at, it's not very handy. It's just too big and bulky. So I'll get one of these little magnetic lights I stick on my dash here. And we'll just point her right at what we need to be looking at, because I just thought I saw a drip. Thought I saw a drip there. Let's cycle this key again. And see, the thing is with these ISCs, a little lift pump, you gotta turn the key off for quite a while. No, shoot, I should have disconnected from that. Damn it. Let me disconnect from the ECM. You gotta turn the key off for quite a while to get it to reset for make the lift pump kick back on. Okay, so that should be on the suction side of the lift pump right there. Okay. So, let's think this through. I would really like to just take, what I would have done. See, I'd like to go take my test hose. I might fire up Quick Serve and look this engine serial number up and see how they isolate it on their. I mean, you can do an inlet restriction test too, but that's not gonna, we don't have an inlet restriction. We have an air and fuel problem. And that fitting back there, the hard part about this whole situation and the reason it's so difficult is kind of, if this was in a truck, this engine would be standing up here where you could get to it for one thing. And the other thing is, if it was in a truck, it'd be easier to pull the ECM and just kind of lay it on its side on the frame rail and get to the hose back behind the ECM. But being it's in a hay squeeze and it's buried down here, it's kind of a difficult thing to do, so I can see why people have trouble with it. Anyway, let me fire up quick serve. My first thought is, and you know, something I'm seeing right there is a little bit of moisture around those crimp fittings on those hoses back there. Could these things be sucking air through those crimps? Those are brand new hoses, though. Those are brand spanking new hoses. Okay. Huh. Well, let me figure out what I'm going to do here. So, QuickServe's wanting you to basically hook up like 3 different hoses on this thing. All these, I only have one of these clear hoses. So, what I can do is, what I'm going to do, God, if I purge it, is it going to do it again? Do I just got to keep, this might take a long time to do this because I have to let it settle and let the air get back into the system while I have the diagnostic hose on it. Or is it going to have always, something that I've really noticed, and I noticed it when I was down in Petaluma that day, and I told Martin, I said, you could hear something rattle in this common rail pump, and I actually pulled the head off the pump, and that was another thing that I noticed, that it had ceramic plungers in it, and I said, that's not good. You gotta change those plungers and get rid of those ceramic plungers and put the good ones in there, because those things will destroy the engine. So anyways, that being said, everything was fine in there. The cam for the pump was fine. I even pulled the gear pump off. It was fine. Tore it apart. So, what I'm thinking is these lines have to go in through the ECM cooling plate too. So that could be another possible spot that it could be leaking. I'm thinking about just going into the gear pump with my test hose and just getting it purged and then running it. Because like I was telling you, it was rattling. You could hear a rattle in this pump. And I said, that's air. That is air getting in there. So I wonder, and that was even after we had it started and running. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is purge it. We're going to get the line on there. We're going to get the line on there first on one of these gear pump sections, and I think we're just going to have to do process of elimination. Hopefully, that's what I'm thinking. So bear with me. Well, I'm not having too good of luck here. The problem with this whole situation is accessibility. Everything is crammed in there so tight, it's really hard to get any kind of test hoses in there without taking everything apart. So I went to pull this one off that comes out of this test block port, which basically sucks through there, through the, this is basically the suction line to the lift pump. You can barely see, let me see if I can get the camera in the right spot, where they go into the, so it sucks out of that line there. I got a rubber hose on it right now. It's a 3/8 fuel line, and it's really tight. So I know it's not going to suck air. But I broke the darn plastic fitting trying to get the damn thing off of there. And it didn't seem like I pulled on it very hard and it broke. I'm kind of wondering if that might have been part of our problem. I don't know. So I've got a hose. I had, hold on a second. Well, on a side note, that was my wife, and you guys know Lulu. She was having a litter of puppies, and I was up all night with my wife, and yeah, I was really worried about her. I really was. I love my pups, man. I really love them. And she had the first pup, and she had to actually, she went into labor, and the wife took her to the vet. It was before I got home yesterday. And Carrie is a good friend of ours. My friend it's his wife. And Carrie had to pull. It was in backwards, and it was really big. Carrie says, yeah, they're too big for what she's trying to do here. Her uterus wouldn't contract enough to get the dog out, basically. So she had to pull that one, and then she gave her some medicine to induce the labor, I think. I'm I'm a little ignorant with that stuff. I'm just repeating what I was told. Maybe I'm repeating it incorrectly, but anyways, we stayed up all night, and I was worried about her because she never went back into labor. And so wife got worried this morning, and they took her in and C-sectioned her. And so she had 4 puppies, and 3 of the 4 survived. 1 passed away, so it was kind of a bummer. But at least my Lulu Bell's okay, and she'll be fine, because I was really going to be a little bit heartbroken if my little wiener dog, she's only 3 years old, and I was really not going to be very happy if my little wiener dog passed away on me over this thing, and I wouldn't be right in the head for a little while, because I like her probably more than most people. So anyways, Lulu's going to be fine. So anyways, where I was at, I don't even remember. I broke that fitting. I put a rubber hose from there to the ECM cooling plate. And then I got a hose. The test hose is coming on the discharge side, which would be the suction side of the gear pump coming to the top fitting here. This hose here is the discharge of the gear pump going to this filter head, and then it comes out of the filter head and goes to the bottom of the common rail pump. So, I'm sorry that it's kind of in a bad spot. I should have parked it right underneath the light, but I'm doing the best that I can, folks. And I couldn't get on this fitting here. I don't have an elbow on my test hose. It's a straight fitting. So I had to take the fitting out of the hose and just slide it onto the fitting, and hopefully that seals up. I got a clamp on it. It's just so many, it's just like I said, it's the accessibility part that's a real problem. So we got to get a 5mm Allen, and let's take this Allen loose right here, and let's see if we can purge the system, because you're going to have to purge it before you can do much of anything else. Get my 5mm Allen out of here to lay it in the melted snow on the back of the service truck. This time of the year in the Klamath Basin, if you get tired of the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. It's a little bit of a shock for my mom moving her from Florida, because she goes, I've just never seen the place that it's snowing 1 minute and the next 5 minutes later the sun's out and it's 70 degrees. And I said, yeah, that's the way it is. That Allen was loose. That's not good. What do the O-rings look like on these? They harden and brittle? No, that one's okay. So let's cycle the ignition. We'll have to get all the air purged out of the system. I'm not getting anything through there yet. All right. Oh, I didn't wait long enough. You gotta wait a long time for this thing to reset to where that lift pump will kick back on. Takes forever. I probably could activate it with Insight. But that pump is pumping. I can hear it. It is pumping. Yeah, I see fuel right there coming up in the filter head. It doesn't act like it's doing what it should be doing, though, I'll tell you that much. Like, we don't have... Something's not right. Well, I'm sucking out of a bucket right now, and I just basically... I can do this and get this thing to prime up a little faster, because it does a 60 second, 1 minute lift pump override test. So I want to go to data monitor. And I want to go back into hard start. And I want to go down here to my fuel pump. Okay, so there's no pressure in the rail. I purged it as much as I can through the bleeder on the filter head, but let's get in here and see what happens. Hang on, I gotta reposition here. This tilt wheel's like needs to be tilted up. Okay, now I got room to get my laptop in my lap here. So here we go. Watch the rail pressure. It'll take a little while for it to come back up. There it comes. I want to look at the clear hose I got on there. I'm getting air. There is air coming through that line. Bigger than shit. Yes, there is air in that line. That's on the suction side of the gear pump. Now it's not doing it now. No, there goes some air bubbles there. There goes the air bubble. What's our rail pressure at now? I don't know if I finally got it all purged out of the system, or I gotta disconnect. Why did that? Why is that doing that? Why would that burp and come back out? Look at that shit. Why is it doing that? Well, to me, that tells me there's air. Huh. I'm not certain that if it's tight enough on this fitting that I've got on here. That might be, is that where it's coming from or not? There's air in there. I can see it. Well, I'm sucking straight out of a bucket, and I never can out of the... I've got the clear line feeding the common rail pump where I can see the bubbles, but I never can. I've went through 20 cycles of 1 minute purges with the lift pump, and I never can get rid of the bubbles coming out of that bleeder port right there that I've got the Allen head out of the filter head. So I pulled all these hoses and looked at the O-rings on them. I don't see anything. I really suspect now we'll pull this air horn off, get it out of the way, pull all this shit off, pull this ECM off, look at everything on the lift pump back behind the ECM and see what the hell's going on. Well, hopefully I can get this thing out of there without draining the coolant out of it. And the coolant lines that feed the air compressor are right smack in the way. Hopefully I can get that thing wheeled out of here. I know one thing, is whoever put the ECM in it tightened the living piss out of the plugs that go in there, and you just, I know you don't want stuff to come loose. Boy, you don't tighten them up that tight that it'll damage the ECM. It will damage the ECM for certain. You tighten them up too tight like that, pulls the solder loose on the board and everything where it connects. It's always, usually the problem is where you can't see it, where it's hard to get to. That's usually where the problem is. My idea here is to pull the ECM off the ECM cooling plate and then pull the cooling plate loose. It has the lift pump attached to the back side of it. Once I get the ECM out, it should give me a little bit more clearance maybe to maneuver the cooling plate out with the lift pump on it. Okay, got that one loose. A couple more bolts here. Golly, you know these have torque specs on them, dude? Jeez. Get your quick serve out and get a torque wrench out and torque the fucking things. Just fucking everything on there so tight. Alright, and we should be able to get the ECM, hopefully, get it out of there. Okay, let me go lay this down somewhere. I really don't want to mess this up. Pull the bushing out and another one's on the back side. They always fall off, and then you gotta hunt for them. So I need an extension. And I think this one line goes back into there too, so through the return, I think I might have to pull this one banjo coming off the common rope pump. I don't remember. See, any bolt that was easy to get to, they tighten the living hell out of it. And the ones that are hard to get to, they don't tighten them up. So they just overcompensate for the ones they can get to. Just good Lord. Not the easiest thing in the world to deal with. Good Lord. Okay. More bolt, if I can find it in the dark here. I don't know if the camera's picking up any of that or not. Oh, they tighten the hell out of that thing. Can't say, I guess I can't badmouth them. Yeah, I am using a 1/4 inch drive ratchet, so part of that's, I've got probably the wrong size tool for the job. Let's see here. Probably should have kept the ratchet on there, yes. I'm working on her. Sure hoping I see something back here. I'll get all the bushings out that I can get out on it. Do I see anything back here? Really hard to see anything, actually. And I think this one line coming from the common rail pump here, is it attached to? No, it's not. It's going back behind it. So let's see if we can get this thing out of here without too much trouble. This wiring harness is kind of right smack in the way, ain't it? Kind of wondering, usually you don't replace the ECM cooling plate when you replace the ECM, so I don't know the whole story behind this part. But, I don't know. Let me get this back here. Get it around this. Okay. There's the wire for it, obviously. Gotta get the condom off. Alright. Maybe it comes with the lift pump? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. Okay. Turn this off. Let's go look at this thing, huh? Real closely. So, it's... I mean, I don't think you could you get that in backwards? I don't think so. I don't think you can get that in backwards because of how it's offset here. And you really can't put it back together backwards as far as I can tell. But I'm noticing something right in there. See how that's damp? See how it doesn't set square in there? I mean, it's just a mount, but look how it's up against the banjo washer. Is there a possibility that the banjo washer got tightened up and it's got a piece of that stuff in between there and that rubber mount? Is that a possibility? I'm really wondering. Let us get a 17 millimeter. This is damp. Here. Wait, I got a 17 right here. There's fuel in there. I guess we could really look at every banjo washer and everything on it to see if any of them are torn or what are these? A different size. Okay, let's I didn't take, hey, you know what? I did not take that loose. That was not tight. That was not tight, guys. God, that might have been causing all the problems right there, because that's on the suction side. God, I'm really wondering. Really wondering, that fitting was not tight. It was not tight. What does this one look like? It was up against the screwed up looking. It looks okay. That was not tight though. That makes me feel a little better that maybe we might be solving this problem. That one appears to be tight. That one's tight. This would be on the discharge side of the pump. You would think you would see wetness here or even here. Man, I'm kind of really thinking that was probably the problem, was that fitting was loose and wasn't tight up against the banjo eye. And so the sealing washer wasn't sealing completely up on it. Kind of what I'm thinking, I hope. Or is, let me see here. Get that pushed back in there square where it's supposed to be. That looks a lot better there. Just trying to see if there's anything here that could possibly be causing this issue. I know it's a long ways to go, guys, but I mean, I got to figure this out. So I'm going to probably, I'm really thinking, I mean, that fitting was loose. That fitting was definitely loose in there. tighten this one, but I'm going to tighten that one up a little more. Probably should torque them, but I just want to test it. Do the whole purge test and all that again, and see if I get any more air bubbles out of this thing. I know that sucker's tight now, and I know it was not before. And I don't even have to bolt it up. I could probably just kind of jerry-rig the hoses and half-ass stuff in there to get it hooked back up. Let me see what I can do here. You know, so I don't really know what I got going on here. Okay, so I unplugged the OEM. I bypassed the entire ECM cooling plate and the electric lift pump that mounts behind it, and I came out of my own lift pump. It's got a little inline filter on it, and I came out of the actual port on that test block back there. Basically, I'm bypassing the entire ECM cooling plate, and which I don't want to run. I don't want to get things hot. I don't think I'm going to get it hot. It's pretty cold today, and I'm not running it very long. But just for testing purposes. So anyway, sitting there trying to think about this, you know, why is this, you know, them boys, when they had this apart, they didn't get that right. Let's tighten that up. I see that's not right. But what I'm thinking, so what, I bypass it with my own lift pump, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. I need a 7/8. And I was getting air. It didn't matter. If I was going through that lift pump, I was always getting air out this bleeder port. I could never get rid of the air. No matter where I went, either sucking out of a bucket or sucking out of this. Hang on a second, let me, I need to get down here somewhere. Damn it. I want to round that off. Yep, they didn't get it tight. Okay. Anyways, I've cracked this bleeder numerous times now, and I don't get any air out of there. But what I'm trying to say here is that the fuel, I don't know if I'm thinking about this wrong, but you know, you guys have pulled fuel filters before. Now, what I'm thinking is that lift pump doesn't run. Once the engine's up and running, that lift pump shuts off. So, if that gear pump is pulling more fuel than that filter's not gonna be full of fuel, I don't think. The only way that filter's gonna be full of fuel is during the priming process, is what I'm thinking. So I was on quick serve and I was watching reading the fuel flow diagram and stuff, and I'm convinced that you could never run one this way. It won't suck enough. The way the fuel is routed through their pump and the way it's banjoed through the eye on the ECM cooling plate, that gear pump can always get plenty of fuel and suck through it when it's not on. And the way this is plumbed, I just don't, there's no way, I don't think you're ever going to be able to suck enough fuel through this pump that's static now. Yeah, so we're just going to have to prime it up, and then let me see, I'm on inside. I'm trying to do the override test. It runs a little longer to fill it up faster instead of having to mess around with the 15 seconds. But yeah, it's basically just running it out of fuel now. So it's going to take a while to get it primed back up and get everything filter full of fuel. It's just basically running itself out of fuel because it can't pull it through this pump that I've got on there quick enough. So we'll get it primed up here and get it started. We'll start it up again and just shut it off, and let it prime up again. Yeah, it's basically run itself right out of fuel is what it's done. You gotta have something on these things to prime this gear pump, you know. Yeah, it's out of fuel. It's not really getting aerated now, it's just kind of, I don't know how you even explain it. It's sucking, it can't suck enough through that pump fast enough. So it runs itself out of fuel because there's not enough flow through the way it's plumbed now. I guess that's the best way I can explain it. And I noticed another thing before, if I left this bleeder plug out after I primed it, the fuel wouldn't stay up towards the top of the threads here in this filter head. It kept going down even, you know, so that tells me there's air getting there displacing the volume of fuel that's in it. Yeah, I mean, I ran the whole thing out of fuel. Man, this is taking forever. And I'll be back when I get this thing primed up. Now, like I said, there's absolutely no air coming out of this thing now. Let's let this cycle go, and I'll show you, hopefully it proves me right. The fuel will just stay right in the top there, because there's really no reason that it should go down now. My thinking's correct. We're not getting any air on the suction side of the pump, for one thing. Kind of hard to even see it with your, you can kind of barely see it there, but and yeah, it's just staying right where it's supposed to stay, right in the top. Before, it just kept going right down. So what I think here is going on, either that ECM cooling plate, you wouldn't think that'd be cracked. You think you would see a physical leak there somewhere. Because I know Ed and those guys put a 15-pound regulator on it. And they put a 15-pound regulator on it and it held pressure. So it's got to be something going on with that lift pump system in there, that electric lift pump on the back of the ECM that Peterbilt put in there when they had it down there. Let's prime it up again. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prime this thing up completely full, you know, with it bled out the way it's bled. And I'm gonna let her set for a while. Look at the fuels right at the top. Yep, that fuel is right at the top. Let's do this and see if there's any air. I could have swore I saw a little slug of air come out there. You know, is there something wrong with this filter head? And we're gonna have to bypass that. But I think the only thing we can do now at this point, we know it should fire right up. There shouldn't be any air in the system. This thing should start right up. So she fires right up. I'm going to just kind of purge this one more time, and then I'm just going to leave it alone. I swore I seen a little bit of air there coming out of that thing. It makes me wonder if there's something wrong with that filter head. But once this starts running, there's not really anything there. Just when it initially starts. Yeah, there's nothing there now. Well, let's just leave it alone, I guess, and let's go over here to live data. And I'm just kind of wondering, see that rail pressure saying it's 17,000 psi in there right now. Well, let's let her set a while, and we'll see if it starts. Alright guys, well it's been sitting for about 2 hours. And I'm just kind of curious to see. Now before, every time this thing would sit, you would pull this bleeder out, and there would be no fuel up here. And now look at the fuel, it's clear to the top. I'm having high hopes here that I think I've narrowed it down. I still don't know what could be wrong with that. There's got to be something sucking air through that lift pump somehow, or that ECM cooling plate's got a crack somewhere in between there and the return port or something like that. Goofy going on. I don't know. That's really strange. Let's see what, before we start it, I'm pretty certain that I'm on the right path now. This has been kind of an ass kicker. I'll tell you what, this is probably some of the toughest problems you could ever do, is an air and fuel problem when you can't find it. I mean, I had that special hose of the bubbles, and I just kept getting bubbles everywhere, and I thought, you know, I'm just gonna have to start isolating stuff, I guess. Yeah, it sounds like I need to get my ass up to Klamath. Hopefully. I'm gonna let this thing set all night. What I'm gonna do, before I leave tonight, I'm gonna pull that bleeder and prime it clear to the top, and then tomorrow morning I'm gonna run down here. It'll be Sunday, but curiosity's killing me, and I'm gonna come down here tomorrow morning with everything primed, leave it primed tonight, and then come back tomorrow morning and then see if it starts right up. And if it starts right up, then we're gonna pull that ECM cooling plate and that lift pump again and just tear every damn thing apart on it we can find. If you don't see anything, I guess, what do? Order a plate and a lift pump, I guess. Just a really strange problem. Any day now. Come on, this new Insight version is so slow and lethargic. I kind of was, you know, through process of elimination, I just knew that I said, you know, those guys changed all the hoses, there's another filter head by the tank. They checked the cap, the vent on the cap. They checked everything, those guys did, you know, and then all these hoses have been changed, and then I bypassed just about everything today, and I said, man, the only thing left is that cooling plate and that lift pump. And sure as hell, I've went past them, and here we are. Now it seems like we're holding prime. I wonder if I see there's two channels in there where the supply and return go through the plate. you know, or the suction and the discharge go through the plate from the lift pump. And I wonder if they're cracked somehow. You know, if there's a hairline crack in there, in that channeling or something in there. That's what I'm wondering. Or is there something in it's got porosity from the casting in it or something. I don't know. It's really strange. This is definitely a weird one. I don't need a work order. Is there any fault codes? No fault codes. Let's go to the data monitor and let's see what our fuel rail pressure is. Engine, hard, oops. Fuel rail pressure commanded. Okay, guys. Starts right up. And it didn't die like it usually does. I'm pretty certain we're on the right path here, guys. We've isolated it to the ECM cooling plate and the let's pull that plug out of there real quick. I'm pretty certain we got her narrowed down. Look at that. Look at the fuels right there at the top. Before when I did that, it never was at the top. I would shut it off, start it and shut it off like that. Even when it would start again, when I was hooked up to the ECM cooling plate and the OEM lift pump, and that fuel would not be there like that. And I'm really thinking it's the ECM cooling plate and not the lift pump, because Ed put a 15-pound pressure regulator on it and he never saw any leaks. So that tells me that it's like the two channels in there are cracked somewhere. That's what I'm really thinking, guys, in that plate. And I gotta call the owner and ask him, why did they change the ECM cooling plate and the lift pump? Why was that? Was that part of this? I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect. Just starts right up. Well, guys, I'm gonna prime, just make sure it's primed really good, and then I'm gonna leave it all night. And if it fires up first thing in the morning and doesn't quit, and my rail pressure is good and everything like that, I'm gonna pull that plate off of there. And I don't know if there's a way that I can pressure check that plate somehow. I could probably rig something up to see if it holds pressure. I don't know. I'm trying to think this through here. I don't know. Don't know. I guess we'll see when we get there. But anyways, this has been kind of an ass kicker here, so upwards and onwards. Thanks, guys.